a new member to a Classic Car Club, unpacking and unwinding the experience what it's like to own an M2 and put it through its paces like it was designed to do. 2019 M2 competition, new to me. Beginning of the year I got it, and it was right as COVID hit, so kind of unique timing, but nice to have empty roads to start with. This is the first time I've been on the track, and so far through 4 heats, I'm really impressed with what it brings out of the box. I think that there's definitely limits to where you can brake, and then there's definitely limits to what you can turn in with understeering wise. The car has a bias to go into a corner and miss your spot, addressing a little bit of the feel in the upfront steering, some high-speed bouncing. You know, the car does travel a lot, and it doesn't feel as planted. But then again, you know, you're splitting hairs when you're going through corners, 65, 70 plus miles an hour. How do you make that, how do you improve upon that? And it's little tweaks here and there. What's funny is, you know, I've had a handful of BMWs from an E30 to an E46 and now this, and what always needs to be addressed is sort of the similar things that take it a step above the street. And so it's camber, it's, you know, looking at the adjustability of damping rates and rebound rates, and then also spring rates, being able to bring that center of gravity a little lower. And then also always there's just a cushiness to the front control arm bushings. Going with something a little more solid in a couple more places just gives it that extra level of feel and comfort and really confidence in the track. First time running 19s, I've run smaller size of the, I think they're the Michelin Super Sports, Pilot Super Sports. As a street tire, there's a lot of bang for your buck. You definitely can't have them overinflated. The fronts will get hotter just because of the brakes. They do have a lot of a feel to them, but there are limits. As soon as they get, you know, real warm, you can feel them wiggle, and that's a lot of the experience of the car. It's a lot of fun to feel, but it also is limiting when you go to push it. The reason it's in the stable is the 19 has the S55, right? So that was really, and the bigger brakes I think are really 2 important pieces. All the brakes are heavy, they definitely do their job. The package of the size, the short wheelbase, the power that it lays down and the amount of torque you can get. You really don't have to really stay on the high RPMs like you would in the traditional M. It still has a torque to pull you out of corners, and it's linear enough that you're not gonna get too much torque coming on at once. As far as me going for any tuning, that's a little bit maybe down the road. I think what's really fun about the car is it's super dynamic, and there's a couple places where it starts to give first. And by addressing those, you know, we can get a little bit more aggressive with the front, get turn in to be a little bit better, understand how planted through corner you can carry more speed, and then be really predictable on throttle as you're exiting corners, and really that's where you're going to make up the speed anyways. As long as you hit the last corners going in the straights and you can maintain the speed in the infield, I mean that's where you're going to pick up the difference.
What I asked for because we're doing the real world condition test, driving in Manhattan in traffic. Sam's gonna drive this car as his daily, so it's important to know how it feels on the road too. And we do have one corner here in Manhattan, this little 96th Street carousel. Overall feel of the car, it's got loads of grip. These things really are kind of a bulldog of a car. It's kind of reminiscent of the 1M Coupe. Take all the M3 parts, bolt it onto a smaller car and make a little hot rod. Rather than just stiff, I'd say harsh suspension. Even going around that carousel, that was one of the smoother bits of road we have to ride around here. There's a couple bumps in the middle. The car was dancing a bit more than I'd like it to. If the dampening was better matched to the springs and it was more compliant, I think you'd actually get better performance out of it. In doing so, keep the tires in contact with the road more than with the stock suspension. So that's my theory. We'll have to see how that pans out. Now with the Olin suspension kit, camber plates, solid bushings that went somewhere, although I didn't take good notes on where they put those. Mostly stock rubber elsewhere. It's been lowered and corner balanced and aligned to a bit more of aggressive alignment spec. Up the West Side Highway in traffic, where we couldn't really tell much. But I will say, even at low speed, it seemed like the road manners are actually maybe better. I do, as I mentioned, I love these M2s, but I've always found them to be a little bouncy, and a lot of times I find cars that not necessarily too stiff, just the dampening isn't well matched to the stiffness. Although we've made the car stiffer, I want to say it's a better match, and it's gonna give us a better response and kind of more compliance on the road. So far, it seems good. I mean, it's no doubt it's still taut, so on some of these big cracks we're getting a little bit of a bounce. Maybe something, good thing is too, these are adjustable, so I would say right now we managed to have the dampers a little too soft, and I believe Sam's plan as we go to the track, he's going to crank that up a bit and increase the stiffness of the dampening. But, as you play around, you might find you want to do that for the road as well. Other than those big dips where you get a bounce, we're taking on some of these other cracks, and it seems actually a bit more compliant and balanced. I'm pleased with that. And I definitely can't say we've lost any comfort or compliance. If anything, we've improved it, even though we've gone a bit stiffer. For my part, road tests, I think this Olin suspension's doing the job. See how it comes out on the track with some more scientific data when Sam puts down some numbers.
We're back. It's been, 25 days, something like that? It does feel like we're just here, and the weather is pretty similar, which is nice. We started bone stock. Now we're at Olin's R&T, recommended spring rates, Rogue, mono bushings in front, and ground control camber plates. 2.8 degrees camber in front, near zero, toe, rear is about -1.5. I mean, it started on the ride over. I mean, you can just tell that the dampings were really softly set. It's a fun experience to feel more control, but also feel like there's a little bit more sophistication without really breaking your back. So it was nice on the ride up, and then so far today, it's like dialing a little bit firmer, finding ways to basically make the car a little bit faster, and immediately stands out as turn-in's awesome, brake feel, sort of the precision you get back from the mono balls. And getting the geometry right, and then just flat out cornering. When you have a lot of speed, the car settles really nicely after getting thrown off balance or hitting a curb or in a compression section. It really comes alive to a point where it's like you're taking the best that M does and then really just going a step above, and it didn't kill me, which is nice, because that's always the fear, is going a little too far. There's about an inch and a half drop, which is nice. I think the posture by which you feel, like more in a cockpit, a little bit lower, was phenomenal. Again, I just think that the geometry in the alignment alone makes the car hug and track more. It kind of tram lines a little bit. Like you get that responsiveness, you get that feel. I think there's a little bit more ambient noise that comes through, which is probably just because it's less rubber, kind of like taking some of the noise out, and you feel a lot more of like the hard, what I'd call like a hard bump or a hard pothole. But in general, there's a lot that's pretty soft about it. It's totally not unreasonable. I mean, if you're in sport mode, you're going to hear the exhaust more than you're going to hear any of the suspension components anyways. On track, it's much more composed. It's much more predictable. I think that's one of the nice things is it felt like before you're always fighting for front end grip. And now it's much more balanced, where when you've overcooked it, but how to turn in and really get the car to start rotating. And the nice part is, then add the gas pedal, you can start steering with the gas pedal a lot more effectively than I think it was before. Before it was like an understeer machine. You'd come in, you'd try and get turning, you couldn't get it. And then only when you really matted it, you'd create these big power slides. Now it's really a nice balance of turn in response, getting good turn in, but then also having the trust in the rear end, with pedal throttle to be able to get out. And it's one of those things where we did all this. We're at a point where we're still on the stock Pilot Sports. They're a great tire. We probably reached the limit, but it's also a street car, so it's going to do that really well, and it's going to put up solid, respectable lap times without going overboard and having to go to a complete dedicated track set. So far, and again, so my last time here, similar day, car was stock versus today. That was my first time on track. Today was my second. So far, my best session last time I found 3 seconds and change, which might just be more track experience, but it's definitely a lot of confidence being able to take sweepers faster and turn in. And there's a couple, I think the first 3 turns are double apexes, and you really have to fight at the front of the car. It's much more composed than it was the first time around, so that's nice. And then you get to the fast sweeper section, and the rear of it really likes to get settled a lot more, and you can carry more speed more predictably. I don't know, I'm still smiling. I think it takes what BMW M does really, really well. Like, the competition has the S55. It's a great power plant. Maybe it'll get a CS tune at some point, but for right now, like, I love the power it puts out given its composure with the suspension components and how good it is. So the only thing I'll do is I'll code out some of the annoyances of BMW, like the fasten seatbelt, the rev match, some of the quirks. Like, I'd love to have temperature on my gauge, like built-in oil temp. So some of that stuff that they left off on an M car is a little disappointing, But like I said, at some point it'll be a CS tune and just tweaking the little things to get it right. I couldn't be happier. I guess to say the wheels too, like, you do feel a little bit more pickup, slightly lighter, more aesthetic than maybe function, but I couldn't be happier with the setup. Nothing major for sure. The hard work is done, and that perfect tuned up version of that weekend driver that you can truly put to its paces on track. No one's doing time trials, no one's going door to door racing. And then it's a smile on your face with the windows down and sunroof back on the windy roads. Well, I mean, big thanks to the car club. I think that's the biggest thing. I sat down with Phelan and Jeanette over beers, and it turned into an idea that not just thought about, but executed on really, really effectively. And I came up with a game plan. There was a quick huddle internally, and what we ended up with was a fun little project that turned into 2 awesome days at the track, an unbelievable setup. All the help and resources you could ask for, and the end product is, again, something that's just, didn't go overboard, absolutely added to the car in the ways it should have been added to, and thanks to Zach and Mike and everybody behind the scenes who helped put it on pat. Super stoked. You couldn't be, it's just, you take an M car, you add just the right touches to make it that much better.